All right, thank you all for attending this afternoon. We're here to honor Ross Chapin Jr. First name was Ralph, but never ever used him like that. We always knew him as Ross. He was a past president and treasurer of the ARHS. And he was a great friend of the society. Originally, he succumbed to cancer back on October 4th, 2008. I was fortunate enough to see him a day or two before he died. He went pretty quickly. He complained of back pain over the summer, and he kind of had slowed down his activities over the prior 6 months at the ARHS. Up until that time, he was a tireless worker. He was one of the driving forces behind the restoration of this unit, originally as Central Railroad of Pennsylvania number 56. He was also the president of the society from January 93 to June of 95. And then he took over the duties of treasurer, which he did for 11 years until 2006. And it was his style. He was very thorough. He learned accounting, basic accounting methods, even though he was a chemical engineer. And he took the time to learn, be very thorough, and help keep the society on a very strong financial footing. Ross had 3 children: Ralph, the oldest, Bill, and Carol. You guys all grew up in New Jersey, right? Well, Ross was a Yankee. He moved down to New Jersey in, what was it, 72? 21, 72. I really got to know Ross through working on the units and also through train shows. He took over part of that responsibility along as being treasurer. We used to drive up to Springfield, Massachusetts to the Big E, the train show up there every year, and I would pick up Ross at his house in Jersey, and we'd spend a couple hours in the car and all weekend in the show talking about society, business, and just life in general. Often he'd have his grandson Justin come up on Sunday, and they would spend time together at the show, wandering around. I always thought that was a great thing for these guys. Watch these guys interacting and getting to know Justin better. He was very quiet first time I met him. He hardly said about 3 words. But the more we got to know each other, the more he opened up, and I learned more about Ross that way as well. One of the best things about Ross was he was never shy to learn a new task. If society needed something done, he'd figure out a way to do it. He went to welding school as a retiree with the group of 17 and 18-year-old VOTEC students. Because it got kind of expensive to hire welders for small jobs. You could get them for the big job, but little patchwork things like that, you couldn't get a welder. So he said it was a little strange being the old geezer in a class of 18-year-olds, but with Ross's personality and his can-do attitude and his smile, he managed to win over a lot of friends of a newer generation. Again, this unit originally was Bangor and Aroostook, number 46, which we bought as a shell back in 1986. There was no engine or prime mover inside. His first iteration, we repainted it as Jersey Central, the Central Railroad of Pennsylvania, number 56. And Ross worked with Jeanette on the Statue of Liberty Herald on the nose. And when we redid it a couple years ago, he was involved in that again. We touched up the nose for some photo opportunities. And Ross was right there again, up on the scaffolding, cutting out the masking tape to make sure everything was perfect. Another unit that was up here, it's actually inside the roundhouse, number 467, the Reading unit, RS3. Ross was a big help with that too. Again, welding, anything needed to be done, from scraping grease to welding to wiring, whatever was there, Ross was doing it. And that unit's put on display up here for actually 10 years. One of the people that Ross worked with closely was Dave Palmer. Dave was our restoration chairman, and I'll invite Dave to say a couple words at this time.
Thanks, Walter. I could very easily stand here for a half hour talking about Ross, because he really became a very special friend of mine. I joined the society in, I guess, 1988, a year or 2 after Ross started, and we worked together basically for 20 years on all these projects that Ross enumerated. But there's 2 things I really want to focus on. One is just Ross was very methodical. sometimes it would drive you crazy because you'd be in a little bit of a hurry or there was some pressure to finish something, but Ross had to do it his way. And he lived the adage of major twice, cut once. And some of the rest of us would not always want to do it that way, but it finally dawned on me that really is a way to do things in this business. So I try to live that myself. I don't always succeed, but one of the other most special memories that I will always carry of Ross is often lunchtime in Barbie Break, my shade spot. He would regale up his growing up in Springfield, Massachusetts, and working a match I steer calculate job thing. And it was fascinating. He would paint mental images, and you could see the whole picture of with the days that a boxcar had arrived, and he had to unload ground bags, very carefully unload them, because that was what they used for the strike plate on matchbooks. And he would describe in infinite detail the local New Haven freight peddler that would service that plant, and it was still in the steam era. So it was just marvelous. And Fred Riley and I and Ross were a trio for many years up there, and Fred and I would just sit there, just taking it all in, and it was just Ross was very special in society, and he was very special to me, and he's sorely missed. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. One of the points Ross's daughter-in-law Charlotte made at his funeral was that the ARHS was a second family to Ross. And a lot of us felt that way about him. I kind of adopted him as a surrogate father. I know other people, like Jeanette, did the same. You know, and Kirsten interviewed him as a bicycle project. You interviewed Ross?
A little younger.
A little younger, okay. And he could tell fascinating stories. Sometimes up in Springfield, I hear the same stories every year over and over. So they got to be familiar. So I didn't want to be rude and say, I heard that one, but he was a great one for storytelling. And so it's kind of for members of the second family, I'd like to bring up Rich. I know Rich has been very close to Ross and Mel, to say a few words, and then we'll conclude with the official naming of the unit, which is our chief mechanical officer. He's the guy responsible for insanity.
Started in 1986. Kirsten was 2 years old. Met Ross somewhat shortly after there. It was, can't say, it's already been said. He was a very integral part to, we went through some tough patches with the organization of some dissension and such, and Ross was always a good sounding board, a good friend to talk to and to resolve some ideas and suggestions off of. And we got over some real tough patches within the organization. There were many times after a board of directors meeting that he and I would pull to the local Burger King parking lot, which was closed well after 11 o'clock, and hash out some of the things which were going. And for that, I thank him immensely. I don't know what I would have done at that time without him. Moving on to what we see here as far as this look, I'd just like to add that Ross is being very interested in minute detail. If you look at this locomotive, there are thousands of these screws. We had every one of them out, and many of them needed to be retapped and re-put back in. Ross did a lot of those screws tirelessly for an entire day on a Saturday. Yeah, we're still missing some, but that was a job that wasn't necessarily fun, and he did many of them. His skills with welding, if anybody gets a chance to look in the cab, there is a bench in the cab. He replicated that bench. It was a BAR idea, hooked to the back wall, but he felt it needed to be there. It was the BAR's way of carrying a third person in a cab. Yeah, I know by current rules and regulations it's not FRA legal, but that bench means something. He made one for both units, and it was special. He was the equivalent of a grandfather to Kirsten, and what more can I say? Thanks.
Thanks, Rich. The board decided in 2009 that the best way to honor Ross would be to name what is now Lackawanna 664 after him. At about that time, we started having discussions of bringing the units up to Steamtown. They've been in Jim Thorpe for 15 years and operated for a long time, but have been out of service for about 3 years due to change in management down there. So we decided to wait until we got things finalized, brought it up here, got it repainted. We figured that would be the most appropriate time to honor him that way. So I don't have any milk. I do have some water. Milk. Ross used to bring a jelly jar full of milk for his lunch at Jim Thorpe. Dave talked about the lunch at Jim Thorpe. So I can't break over the coupler, but I'll just pour some on the front and we'll christen the unit the Ralph Ross Chapin Jr. For you, Ross. Thank you. We've also made smaller copies of her family. Yeah. These are more a little crowded, isn't it? We didn't protect the animal before.
Daddy. Thank you.
Could you